You might be wondering how somebody so young has ended up in the field of personal knowledge management and note-taking. How did I get here? Was it an easy journey? Seeing as I've not really talked about these things in depth in the past on this channel, I thought I'd dedicate this video to talking about my journey through note-taking in different apps and where my interest and desire to teach what I've learned has come from. So I'll take you back a number of years, perhaps, say four years or so, back to where I was in my A-levels, which are these qualifications in the UK that you need before being selected to go to university. And back when I was studying for my A-levels, I was for the very first time discovering this so-called practice of note-taking, because I thought, hey, I'm a student here, I'm studying for these A-levels, perhaps I need to take notes to help me succeed in these qualifications. And so I did a little bit of digging, and my very first encounter with any kind of note-taking apps was probably between OneNote and Notion, picked out specifically for this purpose of taking notes for sixth form and for passing my A-levels. But the thing is, at this point in time, I didn't actually have need for any of these apps. So instead of taking down notes about my biology lessons, my biology classes, better time would have been spent in creating flashcards so that I could practice the recall of the information, so that I'd be able to go into the A-level exam and recall that information and pass the exam and therefore get to university. And similarly in maths, I didn't need to take notes about all the methods used to do integration, differentiation, or whatever else I learned in those lessons. It's not something that I really held on to in my memory anymore, but I didn't need to take notes for that. What I needed to do was, again, nail maths questions over and over and over, just so I knew how to pass these exams. But then eventually it was time to go to university, because I did manage to perform relatively well in these A-levels. And it was at this point I started taking note-taking and knowledge management a little bit more seriously. I started exploring more deeply, coming across solutions like capacities and Tana and Notion again. But in the midst of all of this, there was one app that somewhat stood out to me, and that app is the app that I wrote the outline for this video in, and all the videos before that, as well as all of the articles you've seen me publish on the internet, as well as all of the newsletter issues I've ever sent, and that app is Obsidian. I came across Obsidian about the same time as when I came across Tiago Forte's second brain method. So I'd seen him on Ali Abdaal's podcast talking about his then upcoming book, Building a Second Brain, and in fact I must have mentioned it to my mother, because coming up to my A-levels, as a reward for revising all of that time and getting ready to take the exams, she actually handed me a copy of Building a Second Brain, which I still have up on my bookshelf up there. And so I read Building a Second Brain alongside How to Take Smart Notes, Digital Zettelkasten, and all of the other more popular books about personal knowledge management in digital note-taking apps. And especially following the A-level exams, I let curiosity take a hold of me, and I went about exploring and trying out new systems and trying out new apps again and again, perhaps, because, I mean, the shiny object syndrome had still had a hold of me, and because I wasn't particularly sure about any of this stuff yet, I wasn't sure that, well, you're supposed to stick in one app and one system and kind of evolve from the ground up, like I talk about in Evolution of Note-Taking Systems and Minimal Note-Taking. I had no idea about any of that stuff yet, so I was just fascinated about the subject, and I continued to follow that fascination by trying out different configurations of folders and notes, taking different notes about resources, trying to link them all together, and generally following what I thought was the right thing to do. I followed my brain and my fascination. In preparation for my A-levels as well, I'd kind of moved myself onto this path of, instead of just watching YouTube and playing games and not really focusing at all upon what I actually wanted to achieve in my life, I'd moved onto this path of trying to actually manually focus on tasks and work on things that were going to have an impact on my future and to try and make progress in other areas of my life. And this continued into university as I was exploring these note-taking systems and wondering how on earth I was going to make it work in the long term in one app. And I'd still very much kind of stuck with Obsidian for this time, but I'd have these stints where I'd go off into Notion and wonder perhaps whether that might be the best place to take notes, or go off into a different app like Tana. Tana was very, very new back in those days, and I was wondering, well, this might be it. Look at all these super tags and all of these other features. And so although I was struggling with that, perhaps, the shiny object syndrome, and not really knowing exactly how to take notes, I stuck with Obsidian for the most part up into the end of 2022, so the end of my first semester in my first year at university. And then heading into 2023, I took one or two of these ideas about making progress and exploring my thoughts and my curiosities, and I started turning it into written articles on Medium. And I wrote those articles and the outlines for them and stored the ideas and the planning, because to publish your first article on the internet, that took a lot of planning. And although perhaps these days I've become a little bit more used to it, where I can just bang out an outline and then write it out and then post, it's less of a gigantic project. It was never, the first article I wrote was an actual folder in the project section of the Parazettel. I had to have an entire project about figuring out how to write something, how to post it, and all of that. But I started posting these articles about this progress making, and I enjoyed it. And although I wasn't getting recognised, my first article took like perhaps 1 or 2 views. I think it's only still upon like 3 views total lifetime. And it's all about the lessons I'd actually learned from A-levels. So very much the genesis of my journey in focusing on myself and improving myself. And since then, I started writing about, I think my next few articles were on meditation, digital minimalism, lifting weights, kind of all of the things that I had very basic, very rudimentary understandings in. And during this time, I kept pulling in all of this knowledge about taking notes and using the note-taking system to create these articles. Obsidian was still the best place to do this as well, with its lightning fast linked note-taking and offline capabilities with files just built into your file system on your computer. And from that point forth, that point of me being someone who had quite an Obsidian system going now based on perhaps the Parazettel it was back then, and I'd started introducing elements of Zettelkasten into it, which we'll get onto in a moment. But since that point forth, it's been something. I wrote this very first article about using AI in Obsidian back when AI was a very, very new thing. I used AI to generate an entire, I think it was a content article about something or another. But that wasn't important. What was important was the fact that there's my articles on Medium up to that point, the view count, and then I post that one article about using AI in Obsidian to create an entire article just that I didn't have to write myself, and my views went like that. And I thought, well, here we go, we're on to something here. And from that point forth, I know it's cliche to say, but I never really looked back. I kept sharing pieces about what at that point had built up to be quite a decent personal knowledge management knowledge of my own system and of ways to do so. And I used that knowledge to write these new articles about, well, using AI in Obsidian, or using Obsidian as a student because I was still in university, and for once I actually needed a note-taking system to keep up with these academic endeavours. And then again, it scaled. I wrote more and more about personal knowledge management to the point that I shared this one article about the system I'd developed, which at that point I didn't have a name for. I just thought, well, I've fused together Tiago Forte's Parazettel from back when I'd read those books about building a second brain, and later on Tiago actually released a book called The Parazettel, and I'd read Nicholas Luhmann's ideas of Zettelkasten, whether in the book, How to Take Smart Notes, or from zettelkasten.de website. And I'd taken both of these ideas, the Para method and the Zettelkasten, and I kind of fused them together into this system, which, like I said, I didn't have a name for yet, but I wrote about it in this one article. And again, even from the elevated views that I'd had since posting about AI generating articles, again, I went bam. And I realized, well, okay, people have got specific interest in this method of combining Zettelkasten and the Para method. And although it took me a while, it took me all of that summer of 2023 with writing more articles and kind of building knowledge about business and marketing. But eventually in September, and I'd been using Obsidian all of that time to do such a thing, mind you, so it's very much kind of become one and the same with me and my life now. And I published this one article a little bit later on again called Why I Tried Tana, OneNote, Notion, and then bought an Obsidian Catalyst license, which is like their kind of insider support license to support the team behind the program, just kind of explaining my choices for sticking with Obsidian. And again, that article resonated as well, so I knew, hang on, I'm here in the right place, I'm using the right app, I'm building the right system, there's something that's going very, very right for me here. And like I said, through that entire summer I worked on putting together a product that would share with people that system of Para method combined with Zettelkasten. And at this point I had a name for it, which was Parazettel, and I still sell Parazettel as a vault and as an idea that people can use to take Para method and Zettelkasten as part of their own system and combine them together. So if that is something, I'll just very quickly plug, if that is something that you are interested in, I've written kind of about this story, a little bit more about the details behind the system in a free email sequence that you can subscribe to at the first link in the description, so go and check that out. But anyway, we're up to September 2023, which is where I for the first time launched this product of Parazettel, and again it was very, very well received, and from that point forth Parazettel has been the one and only thing I sell as part of this business about teaching people personal knowledge management. And I've expanded not just from articles but out into my newsletter Fundamentalized, out into, well, now I'm making these videos. And to start with, I knew video was a very powerful thing, a very powerful way to get your message across, but I'm a little bit introverted and I had a lot more confidence in my writing skills because it just happened to be something that I thought I was slightly better at than speaking to camera. But at this point I realised like the massive, massive, massive value of being a face in front of the people who like your work and being able to speak to them. So since perhaps June last year, so June 2024, again, I'll keep bringing it up to this point, I'm still writing in Obsidian, managing my products, and to this point, to this day, it's something that I still do. But back in June 2024, I started doing video issues for my newsletter Fundamentalized. So I'd write an issue and then I'd record a video as well talking about the idea where I could perhaps give more details. But since then I've been recording videos, and then since I think it was about November, I've started doing videos about this personal knowledge management endeavour, and it's been so valuable. I mean, I've learnt, even just back at the start of June last year, I wouldn't have been able to sit in front of the camera and riff in the same way that I have been doing so far in this video, and it's just such a powerful skill. Now I'm in my third year of university, in my last semester, heading towards graduation and whatever's next, and if at all possible, I'd like to continue taking notes in Obsidian, which I firmly believe is one of the best, if not the best, note-taking solution out there. It's, as a piece of software, it's just beyond belief what it's done to my life. And although I know I've had to do the writing myself, it's become such a core part of my knowledge, my ideas and my business and what I share online and how I approach making progress in my life. It really is a fantastic, fantastic app. And I'd recommend it to anybody. So that's my story up until now, which I was going to mention. Up until now, last semester of university, I'm looking at graduating very soon, and if at all possible, I will go on teaching about Obsidian and sharing my knowledge with people, and I hope that's something you want to see from me as well. So thank you for watching, and take care.